I'm joined by my co-caster Jim Dowling here at the Regional Championships. It's so exciting. We've just gotten through our quarterfinals and now all of the rest of the matches in this tournament will be on coverage. We've got a real smorgasbord of top-level play here, Jim.
That's right. They're playing for some big prizes as well. We've gotten past the, you're playing to maybe get some prize tickets, maybe get a little bit of cash. These players are playing for some real money here. So we've locked up first, second, third, fourth. That means everyone here is getting at least the PT invite and 1,250 United States dollars, although the bank will take some of that.
Here in Australia, that still goes pretty far. And not to mention going pretty far, the invite to Worlds, Jim.
If you get first place, yeah, you're going to be alongside the likes of James Moore and Thomas Bott, the winners of RC 7 and 8. Now, of course, you also qualify for Pro Tour Edge of Eternities in Atlanta. Awesome stuff. And the big chunk of prize money, honestly, is a really nice cream on the top of the cake here.
Yeah, sometimes in the past, maybe it's just been that invite that's attracted people, but the money you're going home with today, not inconsiderable at all. And of course, the story, right? For all these players, I'm assuming it's been, for some of them we know, a long road to get to this final stage. And now, of course, that you're here, you have to want to take it all. But, second, third, and fourth, still very lucrative.
All right. Well, we've got players waiting for us down at the table for our semi-finals. Let's head down and see what we've got. On the top of the screen, playing a red-green Delirium, we have Samuel Loy with a very quick forest into Patchwork Beast. On the bottom of the screen, we have Jennifer Rose Holloway playing Demir mid-range. Also with a quick opener here of a land into a Spyglass Siren. Into the upkeep Patchwork Beast, milling one Screaming Nemesis in the graveyard. Delirium count 1. Thomas, did you get to see this Gruul Delirium deck yesterday?
If not on coverage, I definitely was following it closely throughout the event. I think it was on screen once. I wasn't casting, but I was following closely. The breakouts, what a fun card. One of those cards you usually have to show your opponent for them to read. Even the Seed of Hopes, these little cantrips and other cards that no other deck in the field is playing. But Samuel has used to terrifying effect this weekend, undefeated thus far, essentially, all through the Swiss, and then the quarterfinals taking out a big name of Australian Magic in Justin Chung to find himself here. Now in semifinals, must really be able to almost taste that World's invite here. And what a deck to do it on.
Yeah, Seed of Hope was the card there, milling 2 and choosing to take an artifact, a permanent from among them.
Very
into
flexible.
The hand. It's 3 card types in the graveyard now. I know I'm saying that a lot, but this is a super relevant thing for this deck. This Patchwork Beastie in play, it only costs 1 mana. It's a 3/3. The downside, of course, it can't attack or block until you have Delirium.
Yeah, and I was with you on coverage yesterday. Well, I wasn't with you physically, but I was with you in spirit, I think, when you were surprised at how aggressively this deck can turn on a Delirium and how consistently it does it.
So we do have all the information revealed here from us. Jennifer casting a Deep Cavern Bat, revealing a hand of Bushwhack, Keen-Eyed Curator, a red card, and 2 lands.
Yeah, and that Keen-Eyed Curator, obviously a card, another one of these creatures that's surprisingly big for its size. But, I guess the unfortunate downside of that Bushwhack as your removal spell of choice, not able to respond to the bat as we've seen other players do. Convenient
target, the red card of choice here. Yeah. Of course, we're going to enchant the creature. We're going to suspect the creature, I believe.
So +1/+1 and menace, effectively. It also can't block, but I don't know if Samuel was in a real blocking mood anyway, especially against these flyers from Jennifer. So all upside there. It's a fun little one-of in this Gruul Delirium deck. You sort of go, was there really no other enchantment available? But here we see it is representing some bonus damage.
Yeah, menace on a 3/3. This is great. We've got a 1 mana aura on a 1 mana creature. It's already getting in for 4 damage, and it's evasive.
Yeah.
This is super efficient, and you can see the concessions to needing Delirium, needing these card types. We've got an aura on an artifact creature, both of these costing 1, in a metagame full of Into the Floodmaw.
Yeah, but I guess it is only being a 1 mana aura, and it's definitely not the core part of your strategy. If they bounce the creature, you're like, hey, I got an enchantment in my graveyard. You're in some ways helping me achieve that Delirium. It was when I first read Red-Green Delirium on the list of archetypes, I wondered if we might see an even heavier commitment to Delirium around cards like the fly trap that rewards you for getting a higher delirium count than just 4. But Sam's deck is so efficient and respectable and low to the ground, and that's why it's been so successful, I think.
Now, we do see here Jennifer did explore with the Deep Cavern Bat, found a Tidebinder on the top, put that away, really looking for the third land here just to access more of the hand. There's at least one 4-drop in hand, and there's plenty of interactive spells. But with 2 lands, we're really limited in how much we can do. We don't have the ability to double spell, as they say.
It's a tough spot that we saw our red-black mid-range player in the previous round, where you're definitely the more controlling, less beat-down player in this matchup, and you find yourself on the defensive with very limited resources to try and respond to these surprisingly cheap and powerful damage-dealing creatures coming in from Samuel as they crash in once again, and we can see it looks like the Curator is going to eat some cards from graveyard in response.
Are we getting big already? That's an artifact
the play.
Creature, that's a sorcery, and that's an instant.
So costing yourself Delirium, but in this instance, the Beastie is already attacking.
This is so very cool. Attack with the Beastie. It can only attack with Delirium and then eat the entire Delirium. Grow that keen-eyed Curator.
The best of both worlds there as Sam just finesses this graveyard. It's now a 7/7 trampling Raccoon Scout, so a hefty creature for just green. And this is representing a huge chunk of Jennifer's life total, which, again, as you said, on that limited amount of mana with only some pretty spindly 1/1 flyers in play, or a 2/2 bat at least with that Explorer, still not enough to really put up much of a fight. You're going to need some huge draws here to prolong game 1.
Yeah, it was actually kind of nice that when the bat explored, it didn't find a land. Of course, you know, you'd rather find the land, draw it, start playing more spells, but even missing, you put a +1 counter on your life-linking creature. That goes really well in a racing situation, and if there's one thing we've seen from this Gruul Delirium deck, it's that every game is a race.
Jennifer goes to combat with both creatures, it looks like, clearly not really valuing the impact of the Siren as a blocker. The Bat clearly can help you defensively by life linking in on offense, but now the ball is in Samuel Loy's court. Can you reestablish Delirium to make that Beastie once again live as an attacker? Can you finish off Jennifer here before you give her a chance to draw out of this 2-land situation?
Yeah, we did hit another artifact creature there, the Wicker Folk, but instead we're just turning this land on. That's going to be coming in here, assuming that Jennifer has nothing to do. Okay, we have a go for the throat on the 7/7.
It's extremely
very
necessary.
timely there. Yeah, of course. The land having the ability to untap the creature.
Yeah,
very cool.
And give it a
clutch.
+2/+0 bonus there from the Restless Ridgeline. It was able to, represent even more damage when you have a trampling creature in play. But Jennifer did have the requisite removal spell there to mop that up. I don't know if anything else would have done it, but she survives. And with the Beastie stuck at home on Delirium count 3 for now, still 3 even after that exchange, there is a bit of a window here. Perhaps the mid-range deck can bounce back. And I was so impressed by Jennifer's play yesterday on coverage in the one match that we did see. I feel like she's got it within her if the cards make themselves available to make this comeback work.
It's very cool to look at the graveyard and see 4 cards, and we have a creature and a creature and a creature artifact and a sorcery. So we're still 1 type away with 4 cards, with something being 2 types, and now we have a creature. But I think a Seed of Hope might have been the draw there, which being an instant, even if it doesn't hit any new types, it itself is a new type here. The little trinket text on Seed of Hope to gain 2 life as well. It's not the reason you're playing the card, but it's a nice little bonus, and we've hit land, so we now have 5 types in the graveyard.
Yeah, I think what we've seen consistently all weekend in this meta where there's so many decks kind of cashing in their hands suddenly to deal explosive damage and, finite amounts of damage as well. There's some grindy late game decks, but not as many. Even incidental life gain like that Seed of Hope can really make the difference in some of these matchups. So Sam definitely might end up appreciating that part of Seed of Hope. Though, as you said, right now, I think he's probably happier just to see Delirium turn back on. That Beastie is now a live attacker. And again, we have Restless Ridgeline shaking off the dirt and cruising potentially into combat. Jennifer, still just the 2 mana available. That's a bit rough.
Yeah, and sometimes, especially with these restless creatures, you need to be acting before they attack. A lot of the time when you have these combat tricks, you want to be acting, removal spells, you want to be acting as late as you can to not give your opponent the information. But these creatures with attack triggers, you need to act before they attack, before they get that trigger to untap another creature.
Yeah, an interesting spot here, able to get the stun off on the Beastie. There's an attack from the ridgeline here. I'm not sure what maybe the trigger went on the ridgeline itself for more damage.
The trigger has to target another attacking
so I guess
creature.
removing the stun counter at the very least, right?
No, it has to be an attacking creature. So there was no targets for that trigger there. A very, very good stun there from the Flood Pit Drowner.
The Flood Pit Drowner really proving its value, though, in like every match we've seen. It's a funny kind of effect, isn't it? And the activation's quite expensive, and yet it somehow seems to do just enough to get these Dimir decks over the line in a lot of situations. As Jennifer now getting aggressive, and Samuel's life total, in spite of that little bit of life gain here and there, getting a little bit to the area where you're worried.
Yeah, you would feel a little awkward if you had to activate this Flood Pit Drowner. Of course, you know, it's better than having a 4/4 menace coming across at you, but that creature only costs 1, that aura only costs 1. So if you do have to activate this Flood Pit Drowner and shuffle it away, and you're shuffling away your 2-drop with a 2-cost activation, you're not going to feel good about it, but maybe it's what you have to do.
The nice thing here, at least, I guess, is that you're not playing it against a deck that is full of flyers or other creatures that are very difficult to block. So in this case, having a Vigilant Merfolk, we saw it get in, add a little bit to Jennifer's attack damage there, and it still represents a blocker against the currently menacing Patchwork Beastie. Sam expanding the board significantly, kind of raising the bar on how many blockers Jennifer's going to need. But Jennifer still gets another turn here, and with Preacher of the Schism, we've seen how powerful that card is over the weekend. Has a lot of options all of a sudden, especially, I can't see if there's a 4th land in there somewhere, but did get up to 3 last turn. So every little bit of air she's able to take in, every expansion of those available options, eventually might even see those curious, enduring curiosity cats coming down.
Yeah, Sam really has presented a very wide and powerful board here, and sort of just saying, look, if you can't end the game on this turn, I'm probably going to end it on my next turn. So what have you got? You know, you have, what, a 2/1 in the air, a 2/2 in the air, a 1/1 in the air. That's 5 damage. If you can pull out 3 more, we'll go to sideboard. If not, you're going to have to learn about how many creatures I have, the attack from the Fear of Missing Out, the attack from the Restless Ridgeline. There's going to be a lot of triggers. There's going to be a lot of damage coming across. Jennifer does have the 4th land. I can see 2 copies of Enduring Innocence in hand there, which are, Enduring Curiosity, which are not the best card here. We don't have the time to really sort of tap out, draw some cards, and call it a day.
Yeah, it's a flash blocker, but this is a much more efficient way to deal with the potential attacker. The cut down, speaking of attack triggers, you want to get off the board before they have a chance to act. The Fear of Missing Out, the Delirium card that you've probably seen the most over the weekend, and follows up that cut down with a Go for the Throat. So really thinning the ranks of Sam's defenses and obviously his attackers for next turn before cracking in. If not for lethal, then like Sam said last turn, I'm going to give you one more draw step to figure your way out of this, but I am not slowing down. I am coming for your throat right here.
Yeah, it looks like she has managed to sort of, you know, remove enough of the pressure that she might survive this next attack step. You know, the Keen-Eye Curator, 7/7 trample, that's off the board. We're now left with a 3/2 as well as the 4/4 menacing Patchwork Beastie. Delirium well and truly online, having, 9-10 cards in the graveyard here. The Kanga Bloom doesn't particularly have great target, doesn't have any targets, actually, aside from the convenient target. That would be a convenient target for the Canker Bloom if it wanted to remove itself here. So it looks like an attack for 5, 6, 7. Sam down to 1, and there is 2 blockers here for this Menace Patchwork Beastie. That's very important.
Yeah, exactly. The Menace has been impactful this game, but perhaps not impactful enough. As you said, the Kanker Bloom not at its best in this matchup. It is just sort of a one-off main deck, presumably for other decks in the field. And here Sam really has to consider his options. As you said, down to 1 life, very unlikely to have a way to clean up the various flying attackers that are on Jennifer's side of the board. So you'd think that if he has an out, it's to try and find a way to win this turn. And there are cards in the deck like Violent Urge that can pull a win out of absolutely nowhere. But in general, you need to find an unblocked or trampling attacker. And I don't know what Sam has access to on that front.
Yeah, only 1 card in hand. The draw for turn was a land. So Sam just weighing up, you know, is there an attack with this Ridgeline that works? What does this 1 card in hand do? There is only 2 blockers. If you manage to remove 1, then the Patchwork Beastie is safe to come through. But even then, there is exactly 7 damage on board against an opponent on 9 life.
Does Sam have just the 1 card in hand as well?
I believe so.
It's a difficult situation. He's really thinking it through here. He obviously wouldn't, there's no reason to rush to throw away attack or concede, but a finite number of outs, really, when you think about what's in the deck.
We'll wait and see what the players can come up with. These players are both local Melbourne players. Sam Loy plays in the city at Plenty of Games, and Jennifer Rose out in the eastern suburbs playing at Games Portal in Ringwood.
It's funny, obviously, there's no bias on commentary here, Jimbo, but these are both the stores that I play at. The Games Portal is a few blocks from my house, and the staff and community there are lovely, and of course, plenty of games. The pillar of the Melbourne Magic community at this point, I think it's hard to disagree with saying that. So these two players representing some fantastic stores and having qualified to here, looking to really put those names up in lights, maybe even at Worlds or on the Pro. Well, they're on the Pro Tour now, right?
They're definitely on the Pro Tour. But, all 8 of our top 8 and 2 extras as well. That was 10 invites.
Yeah.
We do see an attack here. Patchwork Beastie and the Canker Bloom both coming in. Of course, the Patchwork Beastie can't block, being suspected.
It's committed too many crimes.
Sam says, I'm going to attack. Let's see if you make the wrong play. Nope, the correct play was made. We're going to be going to game 2. Before that, we're going to look at their sideboards, I suppose. Sam Loy on the Gruul Delirium deck. Down a game now, so let's see what he has access to in the sideboard.
Some fairly standard cards. I think it's just sort of different kinds of interaction. The Outpace Oblivion is an interesting one. I don't know that there's that many decks we've seen this weekend playing it. It's a way to get rid of high toughness creatures. You'd think like a Sheoldred or perhaps an Enduring Curiosity if you think that's a priority kill.
It does cost 3, which is a lot of mana. Perhaps something to consider whether Sam's on the play or the draw. Obviously, a more appealing card if you've got the extra land down. I think the Paw Patch formations might be pretty good. Overprotect, of course, depending on how much removal you're expecting from the opponent here. I don't think this Convenient Target is the right play.
Yeah, I'm really curious as to why. I have to assume it's just for delirium count reasons, and maybe, obviously, if your opponent has one blocker, you can discount that blocker no matter how large it is and get through. I'm sure it's been a game winner in clutch spots, but yeah, it wasn't the card you were hoping to draw there. What surprises me is there were the one-of Monstrous Rage in the entire 75. I think we talked a little bit about one-ofs yesterday and the propensity perhaps for those to pop up in open decklist events because they kind of give your opponent something to worry about. But that's a card I'd love to give my opponent, 4 of to worry about.
And Pyroclasm is an interesting one. Does it come in? Does it come out? It hits a lot of the threats, but not all of the threats.
Yeah, and it's cool in that this deck, unlike some of the other Pyroclasm sideboard decks, is pretty much built to dodge its own Pyroclasms, where, okay, maybe if you don't have Delirium, Wildfire, Wickerfolk might be, consumed by the flames, but otherwise you can kind of blow away your opponent's board and then attack through for a potentially huge swing. That said, there's stuff like Preacher of the Schism that survives Pyroclasm and blocks decently well. Sheold, yeah, that is like, what part of the Dimir deck do you want to target? Because it's not a particularly one-dimensional strategy. I don't think there's one sideboard card that's going to be the silver bullet for Sam.
And over the other side, in Jennifer's sideboard here of the blue-black mid-range deck, there's some very clear answers here. Ghost Vacuum against a Delirium deck.
Yeah.
Get it in there.
Absolutely. Even Anoint with Affliction, right? Being able to exile the creature so you don't have to worry about adding to Delirium.
As for what's coming out, Cut Down looks horrendous against this deck.
Yeah, I mean, again, we said the creatures are too big to die to Pyroclasm.
The one drop doesn't die to Cut Down.
That has to feel so awful. It was almost amazing Jennifer did find a target for it in that game 1, but now you have the opportunity to take those out, maybe bring something more apt for the matchup back in. Do you board in the extra copy of Sheoldred here? Are you happy to rely on your late game?
I think you have to, not just for the late game, but also just for the beef on the board. It's a 4/5 with Death Touch. We saw Patchwork Beastie being a 3/3, of course, made 4/4 in that game. We see the Wickerfolk, which comes down as a 4/3. There's a lot of big creatures on the ground, and Sheoldred just beats all of them in combat. You've also got a lot of dead air in the main deck that you want to get rid of. Cut Down, not where you want to be. Go for the Throat, also not where you want to be. That doesn't hit most of the creatures in the deck. Of course, can hit a Fear of Missing Out, as can Cut Down.
Even the Tishana's Tidebinder doesn't feel like it's at its most effectual in this matchup. Turning off the Curator if it hasn't grown to a 4/4 yet, pretty valuable, but it's still a sizable body. There's not even that much in terms of evasive keywords that it's been able to sometimes disable in other matchups we've seen this weekend. So maybe those are some more slots you can trim, but it depends how valuable you think cards like Gix's Command or other kind of marginal sideboard pieces would be.
Sure. We see the players here shuffling up, getting ready for Game 2. They've made their decisions. They've committed. They're going down with the ship. One of them is at least. We're going to be featuring both of the semi-finals today. We've seen the quarterfinals. We know who our top 4 is. So we're going to be watching both of the top 4 games as well as the final itself. We actually saw all of the top 4 players in the bracket win.
Yeah, I guess seeding is truth.
First, second, third, and fourth seed all victorious.
Even so, this is sort of a pared down kind of matchup, right? Jennifer Rose Holloway did drop one Swiss round, I believe, over the course of the day, whereas Sam Loy on Delirium had that like blessed run clean through top tables all the way to the end and then arrived safely in top 8. It'd be almost a shame if you managed to lose just one match here in semis and then sort of bounce out in third, fourth place, but that's how big tournaments go, and obviously these players are already in the money, already in the PT invite, so it depends how much do you want it and what can these funky decks produce here with their lives on the line.
Oh, look, the bragging rights is still always the best prize. The
trophy,
well.
the trophy, man.
Looks amazing. Tournament organisers here do a lot of great work making prizes that the players feel good about. That trophy, very schmick looking if you were to put it on your mantelpiece.
And hey, the bragging rights stuff, right? Like we've talked about, unfortunately they didn't make it through. Would have loved to talk more, but players like Ben Tubman and Justin Chung have really storied histories, a lot of success on these big RC stages. So, but, you know, for these players, this is their chance to join those ranks or to further establish themselves in the pantheon of really proven Australian Magic players.
So we're going to see some 7s here. Let's see what we can figure out. Sam, I can see 2 Forests, a Seed of Hope, a Tersa Light Shatter, perhaps a Copperline Gorge as well there.
Jennifer had a no-lander, I think, just threw that back absolutely straight away. A bit unfortunate, but you don't worry too much. You just shuffle up and find a better 6.
That's Magic sometimes. And we've seen plenty of players winning off 6-card hands as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Or at least making a game of 5-card hands.
That's right.
A round to go.
Yeah, they're very close. Sam's hand looks all right, though. It's got access to both colours of mana, has access to a Seed of Hope to sort of start the train rolling, you know, an instant and at least one other card type probably going into the graveyard from that card and replacing itself.
Yeah, certainly in a cheery mood about the hand, no doubt, even after that tough game 1, you know, laughing it off, and must feel he's got a decent chance in game 2. I don't know whether Sam played against any of the blue-black decks in the field. It wasn't one of our sort of most populous archetypes, but it is a deck that's been known for a while, so you'd have to expect when you're putting together a list like this, Gruul Delirium, you've got some idea of your plan, whereas I don't know that Jennifer Rose, even though she's clearly practiced on the deck, has as much prior plan coming in for Gruul Delirium.
Yeah, you're right. Sam didn't play against Dimir Midrange at all through yesterday's event. As we look at the opening hand here, again, I see 2 lands, a Darkflick Shores and a Verge, I believe.
Phantom Interference, Siren, Flood Pits Drowner, Ghost Vacuum.
Ghost Vacuum, yeah, okay. So we've got 2 lands, we've got at least a creature, we've got a Ghost Vacuum. It's a 6. I'm not looking to send this to 5. I'm taking this 6.
Yeah. You're pretty, I mean, if that was a 7, it would be an incredible 7. 7 really live early game spells, pretty much what Jennifer had ordered, but you know, you have to put one of them back. So the Phantom Interference, interestingly, goes, but having the Ghost Vacuum must feel fantastic. As you said, that's got to be the #1 sideboard card between both these players' 75s.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it on turn 1 here. You know, the best thing it can do is just, well, we're starting with a tap land, but the best thing we can do is keeping the graveyards small. You know, it's not so much about exiling key cards in this matchup as it is about just keeping the graveyard small, keeping it in check. As we milled over an Overprotect and a breakout. So a swing and a miss on the Seed of Hope can't replace itself only with permanence. Fear of missing out, though, going to discard that Patchwork Colossus, and guess what? We're delirious.
That's it's crazy fast to just get all those. Even with a duplicate card type, still has Delirium. But Jennifer might now get to. You want to have that Ghost Vacuum, maybe almost regretting having the tap land down early. And now with the pressure from the fear of missing out and the fact that the Delirium is already so built up, decides instead to hold up the mana, and so I might have to interact with the board here. And sure enough, Samuel Loy is rocketing out of the gates. Tersa Light Shatter. I feel like it's been quietly one of the impact cards for the weekend in a variety of different decks. Just so good at sculpting the hand, being a late game threat, and of course contributing immediate hasty damage. And not this time though, says Jennifer, as the go for the throat snipes that Orc Wizard. Get out of here, into the bin with you.
Yeah, Jennifer did have choices there between the Flood Pit Drowner and the Tersa. Of course, going with the go for the throat, because the Tersa is a very powerful threat. Of course, the fear of missing out, not to be underestimated. Very powerful on a board with other creatures, especially with hasty other creatures, you know, from hand. But on its own, it's still going to get some work done here.
It just goes to show how good Tersa is, especially in this deck. Like, arguably, of all the decks today, the most able to get 7 or more cards in the graveyard very early on. Like, it was almost already representing that bonus trigger. So the fear of missing out, the FOMO, I mean, it's a nasty piece of work, but on its own, at least you can count how much damage it's going to represent. You'll live with that.
There's 7 cards in the graveyard. I guess.
So, this Delirium deck is for real, man.
Yep. So we see Go to Combat, No Thank You, Flood Pit Drowner, and Keen-Eyed Curator coming down. Is this a safe spot to play the It's not even a safe spot for the Vacuum, is it?
I guess at this point you've conceded that Delirium's happening, although you'd love to have exiled a bit more of the graveyard now that the Curator's here, because Sam might actually do some of your work for you, I guess. You could say, well, at least if you turn on the Curator, I can then keep you from re-establishing the Delirium, perhaps. Sam obviously also relatively down on cards in hand compared to the start of the game, so the refill of the graveyard might not be as quick, and now we do find a safe spot to deploy that key artifact, the Ghost Vacuum.
All right, so we have 2 Spyglass Sirens. Jennifer's hand also a little empty here, but perhaps these Spyglass Sirens will give the ability to sculpt the top of the deck. Maybe there's lands and they can get turned into something else later. Maybe there's non-lands. Maybe they're good. Maybe they're bad. That's the glory of these map tokens and the exploring that they let you do.
This is a matchup, though, or this situation where the 1 mana cost of activating the maps is actually feeling pretty significant, because even with 4 lands in play in a more timely manner than game 1, Jennifer's on a bit of a squeeze here, having to really be careful not to overcommit. But Sam, at least, also not completely flush with resources. We're in a spot where Ghost Vacuum denying a Curator activation is going to meaningfully change the clock, because without Trample, the Raccoon is going to have a hard time getting past these Siren Pirates.
You know what? This Ghost Vacuum, this is probably the best matchup for cracking open that Ghost Vacuum.
True.
It is going to suck up so many multi-typed cards, so many big creatures. You could get a Tersa, you could get a Patchwork Beast, you could get your own Keen-Eyed Curator if it all falls the right way for you.
Yeah.
We see an attack here with the Keen-Eyed Curator. It did eat Jennifer's entire graveyard in the end step of 1 card.
I was about to say, don't oversell that, by the way. It is just one, the fact that at least Jennifer had cards in the graveyard this time, so you don't have to bite into your own available Delirium to charge up the Raccoon. But and Sam going to continue to build up the graveyard here rather than devour it, going with a second FOMO, discarding a Seed of Hope. I haven't done the quick count on how many duplicates of each type are in the graveyard, but you're at least kind of buffering yourself against Delirium being turned off suddenly by that Ghost Vacuum if you can spread the types out enough.
Yeah, that's right. And this fear of missing out is, it's going to be threatening, especially in multiples, right? The ability to untap multiple creatures for multiple combat steps.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like the combo of the deck, because obviously a lot of the cards are good, but being able to have that gigantic single threat that tramples in the Curator and then repeatedly enable it with FOMOs. You can attack with just the 1 FOMO, then untap, go to next combat, attack with the 2nd FOMO, untap, go to 3rd combat. That's going to run away with the game very quickly if not interfered with.
All right, so we see Sam here thinking about, I guess, whether to activate the Keen-Eyed Kenra or play a card from hand, and he is activating a Keen-Eyed Kenra, exiling the Tersa Light Shatter from his own graveyard.
I think we saw that was a little arm wrestle over exile my card, respond with the Ghost Vacuum on that, and then Sam's thinking, do I retarget the same card?
Sure, yep.
But conserving cards in graveyard ultimately, right? Because you deny a Ghost Vacuum activation effectively on a card that would matter if we do see that second activation of Ghost Vacuum. Have we seen that all weekend? I didn't get it on coverage.
I haven't seen it. I've actually never seen it in person.
I have done it
online.
I've pulled the trigger on that myself in draft.
We have a map being cracked here, a Tishana's Tidebinder on the top of the library.
So did leave those in. Again, not a bad card at all, especially against FOMO and Curator. Those are probably the 2 triggered and or activated abilities you'd love to blank. But
Absolutely.
not the biggest blocker still. Again, it's going to be the advantage to the Gruul deck almost every time here in terms of straight up trades.
And it's a lot worse when your opponent knows it's coming.
That is the one thing that we've seen multiple times with Jennifer's deck and these map tokens. It seems to always reveal some flashy piece of instant interaction that is immediately not devalued, but harder to use when your opponent's like, oh, okay, I'll play around that Spell Pierce then.
Yeah, so we do see an attack here in the air for 4 damage. Doesn't feel like that much with Samuel sitting on, it should be 5 damage actually. There'll be a dice on one of those. So, oh, it's on the Flood Pit Drowners. And a Preacher of the Schism coming down here. What is the alternate art on that one? Is that from winning a cool in-store event, I believe?
I was about to say, I'm not sure. I don't win cool in-store events, so you'd have to ask someone who's good at the game. But it's certainly been a good card for Jennifer over the weekend, right? Again, in game 1, came down and really helped to stabilize a lot. Even generating those life-linking tokens, because we've seen what's so essential to this Dimir deck. It doesn't do a lot of burst damage like most of the rest of the decks in the field. You have to whittle away with these little attacks, even when it seems like you want to be, clinched up all on defense. So the fact that the Preacher can come in when you're at a lower life total, swing with Death Touch represents some pretty much guaranteed damage. No one really wants to trade, and then still have a lifelink blocker left behind to help prevent you suddenly dying to FOMO is really good.
And Jennifer did choose to exile the Patchwork Beastie on her own turn with the Ghost Vacuum. I believe that this is not actually a delirious attack, which means that I don't know if that fear of missing out should have done anything there.
There's 3 instants and a land and an overprotect, so...
Yeah, if I'm
and a
not
sorcery.
mistaken, that player doesn't actually have delirium, which means that this fear of missing out will not be untapping this Keen-Eyed Curator.
Yeah, I think they're counting that just now. He's realizing he doesn't have the 4 types because there's like 4 instants in the yard here. So it looks like there's a ton of cards, but Jennifer, the targeted ability of Ghost Vacuum has really eaten into the available card types.
Yeah, just nabbing that 1 artifact creature as well as forcing Sam to eat the Tersa Light Shadow on the previous turn. I guess this is what happens when your instant mills over 2 instants, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially with not that many non-permanents in the deck, Sam might be feeling a little bit sore about that, but you have to play around the beats that you get. And Jennifer here, seemingly completely in control of the situation. This is the kind of play she's been consistently displaying all weekend. And
we do see what looks like here a second Overprotect. Yeah, there we go. So Overprotect going to make this Keen-Eyed Kenra win the combat step regardless. And oh boy, if there was Delirium for that attack, that would have been so much damage, right? This Keen-Eyed Kenra would have been attacking multiple times.
yeah, Sam might have thought that he was about to just steal game 2 right there and then. But even so, Overprotect, it's a funky card. I haven't really seen many decks able to make great use of it, even though it's obviously, look at all the text on that, a huge power swing. And that was one of the perfect moments for it, right? Instead of trading for your, Preacher of the Schism, I'm just going to bowl over it and really chisel into your life total.
Yeah, that's right. So the shields are now back up. The Ghost Vacuum untapped, ready to nab another card type if needed on the next turn. So Sam really struggling to get this Delirium online.
Yeah.
Going to be putting an enchantment creature in there. We're now up to 5 card types.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You start to get to the situation where maybe you block just in order to make the creature die. Of course, Ghost Vacuum can then get a 2-for-1 deal on card types. But Sam, as you mentioned, sort of now in a spot where even if you can get Delirium switched on for 1 attack, you get past the sort of +1 over the Ghost Vacuum, maybe with a Terza Light Shadow or another way to put multiple cards into the yard at the same time. And then that could be all she wrote, because as long as that Curator is in play, it's a serious threat.
It's this really interesting dance here between the Keen-Eyed Curator and the Ghost Vacuum, right? I believe we're in Jennifer's end step here, and Sam's thinking, do I activate the Curator? Will the Ghost Vacuum just take that? Take whatever I target? Do I save it? So, is it better just to untap? And Sam does choose, in fact, just to untap.
Yeah, because you could activate and target Jennifer's graveyard, but then you can't respond to the Ghost Vacuum eating your graveyard, which maybe you want.
Yeah, Sam really wants to eat the fear of missing out here, and Jennifer would super love for that to not happen. Instead, we see a Wicker Folk.
Yes.
Right now, it's a 4/3.
Yeah, it's one of those cards where, compared to, say, the Patchwork Beastie, even without Delirium, this is still a perfectly fine draw, right? It's a hasty threat. Obviously, you love for it to be larger and have trample, but, even if Jennifer does some shenanigans with Ghost Vacuum and takes you off your 4 card types, this is still going to represent good damage this turn. Although, now we see the potency of the Tidebinder as a potential blocker, especially with that Delirium potentially turned off again.
Yeah, I don't think this is targeting a ability right now.
No, well, then what ability to target, right?
Yeah.
If the FOMO doesn't have Delirium, it can't trigger, so...
Okay. So the Keen-Eyed Curator does, in fact, get to eat the fear of missing out here.
Yeah.
And we're coming over for an attack. There's no Delirium. There's definitely no Delirium. We've got the same card types as last time, just an extra Overprotect. And Sam having a think, does the Wicker Folk come in? Surely.
There's not that much defensive value in the card, right? If you're at 15 life, that's enough. You're not going to die suddenly. And Sam's been so careful trying to set up a good attack here so that, you don't want to get your Curator Tidebindered. You don't want to get your Graveyard Ghost Vacuumed. You have to really be careful about when you go for the throat, figuratively rather than literally. And it looks like the Curator does indeed end up trading for the Tidebinder's body, which at least clears the way for these other creatures you have in play. And Sam's just going to have to hope to peel more threats or at least another land to get the Ridgeline attacking.
Yeah, with 3 Seed of Hopes already in the graveyard, you're kind of wondering what could possibly break this this Ghost Vacuum chipping away here. There is currently Delirium, but it's all held together by that one creature, that one land in the graveyard, which means, the Wicker Folk is bigger, the fear of missing out has the extra combat step, but the Ghost Vacuum can break that right now. maybe Sam needs to draw something like a Fear of Missing Out to put more cards in the graveyard.
If the second copy of Terse is available. It's one of those things where I was actually a bit surprised when I saw this deck list, because I've seen other Gruul Delirium decks, and I think some of them are a bit more all-in on having that Delirium all the time and having it be really robust. But Sam doesn't have that many cards that can discard themselves or otherwise fill the yard abruptly like that. So if your opponent gets a lead, so to speak, with Ghost Vacuum, it's going to be hard to catch back up.
Speaking of catching back up, 2 Deep Cavern Bats, taking 2 of the 2 cards that Samuel has in hand here. Sam now hellbent, losing a Bushwhack and a Keen-Eyed Curator there. So living on the top of the deck.
I mean, you have at least reduced Jennifer's life total. Like, there's an area where Sam has the advantage. Huge breakout here. What will this hit, if anything? Hopefully, you can find at least 1 2-mana or less creature. Then you get an additional hasty attacker, and that might be the thing that Jennifer could not have accounted for, tapping out for those 2 bats. Taking advantage here, the FOMO, I mean... Okay. Do we have a card in hand to discard, or is this just cantripping?
We don't have a card in hand, yeah. The entire hand was revealed for 2 bats.
So...
Wow, okay. Drawing from the Fear of Missing Out, and that has haste.
Yes, Breakout provides the creature with haste if it is small enough to a 2-mana or fewer creature on its printed cost, which of course Fear of Missing Out is. So now potentially 3 attackers, and if that Delirium... Is there Delirium right now? Sorcery, instant creature... Is there a land in there? No, it looks like 2. Yeah, there is still one land.
Yeah.
One land, one fragile land here, providing the Delirium support. Can't imagine that's going to stick around forever, but...
Yeah, so still choosing to take the creatures, which is probably the easier way to turn Delirium back on. But instead, we're coming in. We've just got a 3-2, a 2-3, and a 2-3. 2 life-linking bats. And you really don't want to block with these bats. They're both holding crucial cards.
On the one hand, you don't want to die, but on the other hand, giving Sam back those 2 cards is not a great way to stay in the game long term. So Jennifer, now in the position Sam was when he was sort of holding his chin and groaning in game 1. It's been a real tug-of-war here in game 2 and a lovely match between those 2 players. But Jennifer really has to go deep in the tank here, weigh the options. Are you forced to block? Goes for the double block here on the Wicker Folk, of course, not trampling right now with that Delirium briefly offline. It is back now after it would have been relevant to combat. Thank goodness.
Yeah, so if you're going to block with one of the bats, you're giving back the Keen-Eyed Curator or the Bushwhack. If you block with both, you're giving back both these cards, but Sam only has the mana to play one of them. Never mind, Sam has the land.
Sam was holding that card from FOMO the whole time, so Jennifer had as little information as possible. And now into no mana. You have to think this Bushwhack gets fired off here, right?
What do you keep? Only 1/1s. You know, you can do it on a future turn. You've got 5 lands, although you do have the Restless Ridgeline, so you want to keep your mana for that. You've even got the Restless Ridgeline with Delirious Fear of Missing Out. You know, we talked about how good it would be to have one single good attacking creature.
I guess Sam also values the chance to maybe just Bushwhack next turn, not afraid of possible, you know, responsive interaction. And you get to use this 1 mana now for the Curator, resuming that tug-of-war with the Ghost Vacuum over, you know, card types in graveyard, card types under the Raccoon. All of these there's so many extra considerations above and beyond the already complicated board state you normally have in Magic. And Sam's deck is, you know, putting both these players to the test.
Yeah, so it looks like Sam just having a think here. What do I want to exile?
You probably go for, Jennifer's not allowing you creature cards in your graveyard, so why not eat one out of hers? That gets a bit of a lead in my mind.
Right, and here we are, back on Sam's turn. 2 blockers, Jennifer on 4 life here. A very precarious situation.
1 card in hand does have the mana represent the Restless Reef as a blocker, but that doesn't feel like a super winning play if that's all you're on. Sam at least has to respect the card in hand, though.
This is starting to feel like we might see a game 3.
I hope so.
It's been a very back and forth game, honestly. Big threats on either side, and then the Ghost Vacuum coming down, a whole pile of flyers.
It's been a wonderful showcase of this Delirium deck, right? Because I'm sure the question a lot of people have, if you haven't seen this deck before, is, well, how does it fare into these popular sideboard cards like Ghost Vacuum? What do you do if you can't consistently turn on Delirium, even with all of those, you know, milling effects? And apparently the answer is play a pretty solid mid-range game.
The Delirium cards, you know, Patchwork Beastie, no good without Delirium. Wicker Folk, fine without Delirium. Not, you know, not an all-star by any means, but certainly a fine stat line, 3-2 haste for 3, acceptable. Fear of Missing Out, you play this card without Delirium all the time.
Violent Urge, combat tricks over your opponent's creature even without Delirium. Like, most of these cards are solid. They're playable without Delirium just fine.
Yeah. And we see here the Ghost Vacuum targeting the Wicker Folk in the graveyard, and the Keen-Eyed targeting it again itself. So I believe even with 9 cards in the graveyard, we are not delirious. That is Overprotects and Bushwhacks and all instants and sorceries and 1 land.
But Sam does have 2 types under the Curator and 3 mana to just sort of represent that buff as a baseline, before combat damage, Math Changer, and Jennifer, can't compete with that. There's just too much going on. And the Ghost Vacuum did admirable work there, but in the end, not enough on its own, even after we talked up its sideboard impact.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can imagine that game without that Ghost Vacuum.
True.
First Keen-Eyed Curator would have been going crazy. So we're going to be checking the sideboard, see if maybe anything changes on the play or the draw as we're going for game 3 here. It looks like both players pretty happy right this second to just run back what they ran in game 2.
Yeah, just kind of shuffling up and going again, which I suppose depending on your sideboard makes sense. I don't know if we saw that many sideboard cards. Obviously, there's, in Sam's sideboard, some just extra copies of, say, Overprotect, and who knows whether those were the Overprotects we saw. Maybe they made the difference. But certainly, I don't think that there's a reason to take out the Ghost Vacuum or change any of the Game 1 decisions from Jennifer's side. You just have to hope you draw slightly better removal or maybe a Key Shieldred or something in a window where that can start to turn the tide, because she never really threatened to come back into the aggressive role in the game there. Just stabilized for a while and then eventually petered out.
Do you think that being on the play or draw changes, as you mentioned, who is in that aggressive role?
I don't know if it changed. I just don't think the Dimir Dex creatures are ever big enough to outpace the Gruul Dex creatures, even with that like half a turn of advantage. But I do think it makes it harder for Sam to steal the game. Like a card we haven't seen in either game 1 or 2 is Violent Urge, which does a pretty good Team of Battle Rage impression when you have Delirium, and putting a bonus power and double strike on these huge Curators and other trampling delirious creatures. Like we've talked about the explosiveness of the Prowess deck. This can end a game on the spot out of nowhere, where long before you thought you were, having to consider that. So if you're on the draw, there's less likelihood, I think, that you can set up a situation where, my opponent tapped out for some innocuous turn 3 play. I'll deal 12 to you and leave you at a just critical life total.
It does look like Sam, in fact, went back to the sideboard, did make some changes, and Jennifer following suit here. If you're going to have a look, then I'm going to have a look as well. And it looks like she did change 1 card.
There's no harm in going and taking another look at your sideboarding choices, surely.
It's always worth a look at. Just to center yourself and make sure, no, I did actually make the correct choices. These players, no stranger to being on the stage, of course. They were both featured yesterday during our coverage as we covered 8 rounds. What a slog for these players. At least today they have a shorter day, They're playing 3 rounds of Magic at the most. There's even a break for them during the semifinals. We're featuring both of the semifinals on camera, which means that our other 2 semi-finalists, they're sitting back and recuperating right now, getting their mind ready, getting, making sure that they've got their sideboard plans all in order.
Yeah, and that mental break's very necessary. As you said, not only the sort of sheer endurance test of playing the whole weekend, some of these players were here on Friday playing either side events or even a last chance qualifier, but then also today, with those fewer games, you still have to deal with the fact that the pressure, right, of being up on the main stage under the lights. It's finals day and everyone in the hall is kind of standing around watching. Your friends are probably here cheering you on. And of course, the prizes, right? Every win at this stage is worth a considerable amount of money and a step closer to Worlds.
Yeah, hundreds of dollars for every win. And there is people that are sitting in the lobby watching the coverage on the big screen. There's people that are playing the 5K. There's people that are sitting there with headphones on, all watching these players play. Both of these players have a lot of supporters in the room. I've seen them crowded around. When we announced the top 8 yesterday, there was cheers and hollers for every name that was announced. The community is behind these players. There's only 8 players playing in the top 8 today, but there is many more than that who have a vested interest and a lot of care for what the results of these matches are.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the community that we have still hundreds of players in the room today, even though, as you said, only 8 of them are technically still in the main event, because, we see the store names under these players, Games Portal, Plenty of Games, both big parts of the community. And of course, if you play with and against these players every week, if you test with them, if you contributed, I lent them a card for their sideboard, that's my copy of that card. it shows the camaraderie that people have. We're all in this grind together in a way, and even though sometimes, players might have to knock each other out or otherwise have a bit of a friendly rivalry, when it comes time to cheer on your friend on the main stage, it's all smiles.
The real magic is the gathering we had along the way.
It might be why the game's called that.
So these players, they'll be finishing up shuffling soon. Jennifer on the play for game 3. What is the ideal opener for her? Is it a discard spell? Is it a siren into holding up some interaction on turn 2? What are we hoping for?
I don't think we were wrong last game in saying number 1 priority is you'd love to see Ghost Vacuum. You'd love to get that down turn 1, or if not turn 1, maybe early in the game after you sequence out whatever other valuable early plays you have, maybe a discard spell. Other than that, I think just early interaction, either the cheap counter spells, Phantom Interference we saw had to be bottomed last game just because Jennifer was already on the mulligan, but that's a great card early on. Because then if you can stop the first couple of plays so there's no momentum on board for Sam, you've got the Ghost Vacuum to stop those cards building up in the graveyard, and then it really limits how quickly he can start to get at your life total. Because all that Jennifer wants to do is create a window to play a card we have not seen yet in the matchup, Enduring Curiosity.
Jennifer here with Enduring Curiosity, Gix's command, I believe, and 5 lands.
Okay, I feel a lot better to see that the command did get brought in. I would put some small amount of money on the idea that that's the card that maybe came out of the sideboard if there was any change between round 2 and round 3, because it's an expensive one, but on the play, you've got a little bit more chance to get up to that 5 mana. And what a haymaker if you do land it, right? We saw the lifelink even of those little bats or the preacher tokens helping to make a difference in the first 2 rounds, but being able to buff up a creature and lifelink it with just part of the command's effect could be a huge swing.
So both players here throwing the hands back and going to 6. We're going to see a slightly lower resource game than we're used to. And I always feel, if both players take a mulligan, the advantage typically goes towards the player playing the discard spells, at least in the first couple of turns. Of course, you can end up in situations where players have no cards in hand, and then drawing a duress off the top is a horrible situation. But if you're mulliganing and then your opponent has a discard spell on turn 1, especially on the play, the amount of resources you have access to it just falls apart. Dreams of Steel and Oil, by the way, we haven't talked about this card, but what a card for this matchup. Being able to exile a creature from hand, nab one from the graveyard, it's exile, get rid of that delirium.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's almost sad that Jennifer only has that 1 copy available. I've seen some decks running a few more, often the mono black decks obviously have a few more slots for discard spells, but even that one off, if you can find it, a massive haymaker, not only, getting rid of a card from hand without increasing delirium, but decreasing delirium if the card's in the graveyard are already there. Maybe not on turn 1, but, in future turns, it makes a great top deck compared to what, a 1 mana discard spell usually might be.
Jennifer's hand there had 1 land and it was colorless, so not a very good opener there. On the other hand, Sam has, I believe, that looks like 2 lands and 3 Wicker Folk.
Yeah.
Oh boy. If we can get a 3rd land and just play Wicker Folk, attack, Wicker Folk, attack, Wicker Folk, attack, that could be it. It looks like the 6th card there may be a fear of missing out as well.
Yeah, none of the red, green, gold cards in Sam's deck are good news for Jennifer, especially when you're mulling to 5. But at least, I guess, if one of these players was to mull to 5, I think Jennifer's got a better chance of bouncing back. All you need is a couple of lands, some removal spells, and crossed fingers, because if you can prolong the game and at least deal with some of the big threats, Sam's deck is going to slow down a little and you'll have time to draw into some shielded or other life gain, even just land a Curiosity to block and stabilize the board. That's a long way off, though, and Sam, if indeed the hand is so full of Wicker Folk, may not give Jennifer any time to do that.
Looks like Jennifer's managed to pull off a usable 5 here. I see Anoint with Affliction in there. Just deciding on the last card to be putting back here. So I believe she's keeping 2 lands, Anoint, and a Preacher of the Schism, which is for 5 cards. You've got to be happy with, some lands and some spells that I can cast. Flood Pit's Drowner is the other card there in the hand. Sam leading off with a tapped land, so no action on turn 1 from either of these players, and I don't think we're going to see much on turn 2 from Jennifer, aside from maybe a removal spell, maybe even Flood Pit's Drowner. If a creature comes down here, would this be... Yeah. Oh, okay.
Number 1.
Yep. So the Flood Pit's Drowner coming down. Let's stem that haste creature right there. Buy a couple of turns, get an attack in here.
Yeah, great spot for the Drowner specifically as a 2-1 Vigilance lines up brilliantly against the non-delirious 3-2 Wicker Folk, stemming that haste attack for a turn and threatening to trade on the next one. Preacher of the Schism did find that third lance. I think that was the hardest part of Jennifer's mulligan decision there. Really tough having to choose between the 3-mana creature or the third land you have to play it, but rewarded for keeping the powerful Preacher of the Schism. That could help draw you out of this hole.
Absolutely crucial. Fear of missing out coming down here, discarding a land. Delirium count 1, being 1 card in the graveyard. And a Patchwork Beastie, so plenty of power on the board, not much ability to do anything with it in the face of a 2-4.
Yeah, we've seen the high rolls for the Beastie so far, and this deck's good at enabling it, but it does feel like the most marginal of these Delirium cards, because right now it is just sort of a 1-mana artifact that does nothing but mill a card every turn, and
I mean, that's useful.
It's not nothing.
We see Go for the Throat, finding a target. Artifact creature. That one's an enchantment creature. That one has a throat, so Go for the Throat can find that one. Fear of missing out in the graveyard here. Delirium count 3.
Why do you think we saw the Go for the Throat there on Jennifer's turn? And on the creature that represents 2 different card types?
I truly could not tell you.
Because the Preacher attack is important to get it. I guess it allows you to attack with the Drowner as well, safely.
Sure, yeah. Really just taking an aggressive stance here. You don't have the cards to take this game long.
Yeah, I suppose if you're satisfied that I'm going to spend this removal spell on this FOMO and I don't worry if, a quote-unquote better creature comes down next turn, then it's best to buy an extra 2 damage with it. And then, of course, the Drowner does find a good trade there against the Wicker Folk. Sam, not concerned with, I must get Delirium before I send these in. Happy to trade cards and just seemingly recognizing that you do need to try and clear away some of Jennifer's blockers and start exposing that life total. Sam actually still behind here. And now here's that one of Dreams of Steel and Oil.
That is so huge here. Revealing the hand, Keen-Eyed Curator, and another Wicker Folk. The ability to take both?
Yeah. One from hand and one from graveyard is potentially going to be a huge bite out of Sam's damage. Sam must have been scheming up those next couple of turns, and he's not out of attackers, but this is a blow for sure. The Curator has really been seemingly the card for him, at least in the games we've seen in this match, and now it is... Oh, it's still in hands. Right? We've exiled the Wicker Folk, of course, I guess more immediately attack-worthy.
Yeah, wow. And then the Preacher does manage to come in. Still ahead on life total, Jennifer is. So we'll be drawing a card there, losing a life from this Preacher of the Schism. That was a very clutch draw, that Dreams of Steel and Oil. And she's holding up the Anoint with Affliction as well.
Yeah, and Gix's Command in hand and Tidebinder, it looks like. So 3 really powerful interactive spells. Jennifer has rebounded amazingly from this mulligan. If you're 1 land away from that Gix's Command and you've got 2 spells to buy time before you have to draw it, you're not even being attacked by this Patchwork Beastie because Sam still has not found the 4th card type. I think we've got land and creature and artifact. So
yeah, this Patchwork Beastie has revealed 3 lands. That said, with multiple Patchwork Beasties,
surely any moment now they will rise up from their listlessness and attack. And unfortunately, the one creature that could attack on the face of it, the Keen-Eyed Curator, instantly exiled by Anoint with Affliction. If Jennifer draws a Ghost Vacuum here, that could be all she wrote. But even another land would be very potent. And this is a commanding position for someone who had to mulligan so harshly.
Yeah, I mean, this Preacher has drawn 2 cards now and now has the ability to come in. And we're going to be getting... Ooh, is this getting both halves?
Yeah, 12 to 12 it looks like.
Are tied, so we're getting both halves here.
Always feels good.
Draw a card, lose a life, and get a vampire with lifelink.
Sam desperately needs Delirium for every reason now. Even just the trample on the Wicker Folk must make a huge difference. You need to represent a big attack right here because you can sense the game slipping away.
We've hit a land and the Monstrous Rage.
That will do it, I think. We have Artifact, Creature, Land, and Instant. No way it appears right now for Jennifer to exile the graveyard. So you, at least for a turn, have full power of this Delirium deck available. What can Sam do with it? A FOMO is pretty nice.
With no cards in hand? All right. You're not upset at that? That Monstrous Rage, it also would have been pretty good in hand, to be perfectly fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's never bad, is it? But you didn't get the choice there. That's the thing about the Wicker Folk. It does not even let you choose to mill the card or not.
Yep.
And the FOMO draw being wisely muted by Jennifer, so that will turn off the FOMO's other abilities, but also stop Sam, say, top-decking a haste spell or a breakout to add to this already damaging attack here. And now with 2 blockers available, Sam does not hesitate, can't really afford to, but will be offering at least 1 trade.
Yeah, I mean, these creatures aren't going to sit back and block. The Preacher, obviously a great creature. I mean, you're right. Trading your Tidebinder for a Patchwork Beastie and a card draw. Feels a little bit rough, but these are things you have to do when you're on 8 life.
It does mean that if Delirium is still on by Sam's next turn, that FOMO becomes a much more threatening attacker. We do see the Ridgeline in play as well, so we could see that little combo as long as Sam draws, even if Sam draws a land off the top, that's not a dead draw if it comes in untapped.
Yeah. I mean, it appears that Sam's holding all of the cards right now.
Jennifer attacks
no cards in hand, but holding all of the cards in the match.
Jennifer still doesn't seem to have the 5th land here, and now at lower life total can't even use the Preacher to draw one. So that Gix's command is still, I won't say rotting, but still biding its time in her hand.
We mill over a Bushwhack. Does that do it? That's an instant to go with no, it's a sorcery, right? So it did not add a card type. Although the
this might
the last turn, the Tersa, oh boy,
that's a lot of cards in graveyard as well. We're going to get both halves of this card if Jennifer doesn't have a response. I mean, there is a Flood Pits Drowner and an Anoint, so it seems like surely we will, right?
Yeah, you've got to actually worry if you're in Sam's seat about this Tersa taking you off Delirium.
That's true. I mean, it only exiles the one card, but if at random, if it hits that Wicker Folk with that, no, you've got the second artifact creature in yard. I don't know if there's one hit that would work. There's an instant and a sorcery, so...
Yep. So we have 5 types and redundancy.
Thank goodness. I mean, you have to think about these things when you're playing this deck. It's not normally something you worry so much about.
Flood Pits Drowner coming down and choosing to turn the Tersa Light Shatter off for the turn, which means that the fear of missing out is online. Yeah,
so potentially you have to untap the Trampler here, right? Unless I guess you might want to protect your life total if you want to leave the Beastie untapped to block, maybe finally get rid of this Preacher or the Schism, or stop the free 2 damage coming in from the Drowner. But Sam, I'm sure, wants to end this game as soon as possible and pressure Jennifer's life.
Whatever decision is made, both players are on 8 life here, so we're not going to have many turns left in this game. Choosing to untap the Wicker Folk, and it does get anointed. That's gone now.
Jennifer waiting patiently for that trigger to be targeted before, immediately slamming the removal spell. Both players understand we're at the pointy end of the game here. Very tense, trading in those last few resources as we almost, demolition derby on these 2 boards right here. Suddenly, all the creatures are cleared away. Tersa's still hanging out there if the game manages to last long enough for her to get unstunned and untapped. But
yeah, it looks like Jennifer's really praying for a land off the top here for this Gix's command. That said, if it's not a land, it's some more action. It's a Spyglass Siren, and that's going to do well at finding a land. There's the land. Unfortunately, 1 card too deep to play the Gix's command this turn. But Preacher coming into the red zone, bringing that Vampire. The lifelink on that Vampire, very crucial here.
I won't say I don't believe it because we've all seen what Preacher of the Schism can do, but it's endlessly impressive how this card has just dominated this game 3 for Jennifer.
It has single-handedly been the card of this game. This is wild to look at here.
Sam can't currently activate the Ridgeline, so staring at 1 non-trampling, non-evasive attacker, an attack from Jennifer that with the number of cards she has in hand, he must surely feel is threatening his life total or threatening to clear away his board and then win in 2 turns. Goes for the attack.
Jennifer having a think here. Do I block? Do I double block? We have seen overprotect.
Yeah, true. Having to consider the potential for trample. At least you don't have to worry about the 1 of Monstrous Rage. That's already in the yard. One of the few times this weekend a player has not had to worry about Monstrous Rage.
Very true. And we do see a Keen-Eyed Curator was the draw off the top.
Pretty solid draw for Sam, I think, in this spot. Obviously, you'd love to just win right there, but with Tersa untapping next turn, recovering from that Flood Pits Drowning, won't be able to keep the blocker around, though. Another Anoint with Affliction comes in for Jennifer, clearing the way for a 5 damage swing, since that Explore hit a land.
4 damage.
4 damage, sorry, it hit a land.
Because it hit a land.
Because it hit a land, my apologies. But we don't have the creature land either, so... But the Gix's command is going to add 2 damage to the board, and that's it. I'm so glad that card didn't end up costing Jennifer the game. Instead, it closes it out, and Sam smiles, extends the hand. That was a great game 3. You can't really complain too much. And
every back and forth.
Every resource used, and then in the end, Jennifer able to just stretch out 1 hand over the line in a dead heat finish.
Well, let's come back into a booth, and we'll talk about that game. Well, Welcome back to the booth. Jim Dowling here at Regional Championship 9 here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm joined by Thomas Anderson. And what a semi-final we just watched.
Absolutely. I'm loving all of the magic we're seeing right here. All these different decks, incredible skill and sportsmanship from the players. Like, they're still talking about their game now. I think we hear on the table, Mike, and just in good spirits. That, you know, this is a super high-stakes game, and all that's happening is some really intense, enjoyable magic. The exciting finish there at the end, the Gix's command coming down, Preacher of the Schism.
Wow.
What an all-star, right?
It's a mulligan to 5, but it's got 3 lands and a Preacher of the Schism, so it's like a 9-card hand.
But it comes down to players and how they see their hands as well, right? Like Jennifer, right from the mulligan decision, choosing to prioritize the Preacher over the land that would have been needed to play it, even though that land was a creature land and itself represented a threat, and you could see her weighing up those lines, but not only stuck with the Preacher there, but continued to prioritize it, protect it, always attacking with it, never even considering a trade, even though your life total is under pressure and you're paying more life to draw, and in the end, fully rewarded.
Well, let's see if we can get a glance at the bracket here. We know the result of one semi-final. We know one of the people into the final. But we still have a second semi-final to be played. We know that we had Jennifer winning over Samuel there, advancing to the final part of the bracket. But we're still going to be watching Sam versus Benjamin. That is Black-White Pixie against Rakdos mid-range.
Yeah, what a matchup. Wouldn't have called that at the start of the weekend. And it's going to be interesting because we've seen, you know, one of our undefeated Swiss players already, Sam Loy, unfortunately, falling there at the, you know, second to last hurdle. Can Sam Lewin survive and make it to grand final after a strong first day performance in the Swiss? Or will this unlikely Rakdos mid-range deck continue to surprise us?
Well, we're going to find out very shortly as we take a break and come back with the second semi-final here at Regional Championship number 9.